Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the jungle. We are live on a Sunday live stream. Welcome, everyone. This is going to be a fun one. We got a special guest with us, Mr. John Boston. Him and I share very similar stories. John has followed me, and we've actually known each other for the last couple of years through our stories. But I wanted to bring John on, and I'm going to bring on other subscribers, people that have been in the comments. We're going to have Lisa Smith eventually. We're going to have Timmy, the Forever Bachelor. Maybe we'll do FJT. We've done Rev before. And we're going to talk about different stories about what we've been through. But I wanted to bring John Boston on. John, you guys know John's always been in the chats as a contributor. He talks a lot about his friend remarrying a big lady. And so let's talk about real quick John's backstory. His story and my story and his are very similar. We got married in the same year. We went to very similar circumstances. I've got 3 kids. I think you got 3 kids, John, right?
I got 2 kids.
2 kids. But very similar ages, very similar circumstances of going through divorce, going through the family court system. But let's talk about this. I look back to 1996 when we were making wedding plans in early 97. And I thought my wife was marrying me because she loved me. She probably had some love for me. I'm not going to deny that. But I remember at the wedding, she looked gorgeous. It was a great wedding, but it was all for her. And I never really thought about it till about 2015, 2016, when I was watching Big John's videos. And I realized that, you know what? That was her big day. Now, I knew subconsciously and, consciously that weddings were always big days for women. And the groom was always kind of in the shadows. But it never occurred to me till later when I swallowed that red pill. It was bitter at first, to realize that my wife wanted the wedding, but she didn't really want the marriage. I wanted the marriage. I could care less about the wedding. And that's the difference. And so that's where we're at today. Welcome, everyone. We got Matt, Brandon, Cito, Lisa, Jim. And I'm going to be going through as you guys are speaking. AZ's in the house. Eddie, Call Me Coon. Check all these channels out. And we're going to talk about that. So, John, I'm going to give you the floor. Take us back to 97.
Well, 1997. Yeah. Interesting times. We were getting ready to get married. We got married at one of the nicest places in Boston, right on the water. A lot of time was put into the marriage, or the wedding, I should say, and had a lot of people there. Great time. It was at the time I was still playing actively in a band. My band actually played a few songs at that wedding, which was kind of cool.
Nice.
But some of my in-laws weren't so happy about it. But what was interesting about that time is that people were getting married. But as we were getting married, we were going to pre-Cana before you get married in the Catholic Church. And you just kind of had to go. It was kind of reminding me of just showing up and just be a social event. And it wasn't really taken too seriously. And I think that was the first sign that sort of, she wanted the marriage, but really didn't see what the wedding was. And then, as time goes on and the clock starts ticking, because we were both we got married late 20s, early 30s. And, then when the kids came along, things were fine for the first couple of years. And then after we had moved into a different home, different community, kids went into the school system, and there was a shift that happened. You end up having kids, and the idea of the family kind of gets lost. And I've seen this happen with women where they'll meet other women and they end up gossiping about what's going on. And then they find out, oh, I heard Susie down the street. Oh, yeah, she was cheating on her husband. And you always heard these different things. And it became sort of like a commonplace thing. Oh, so and so is getting divorced. Young kids, second grade, blowing up families. I'm like, what's going on in this world? This wasn't like this a few years ago. And it just, maybe it was the exposure in the school system, but up until the kids were going into, middle school, it was just constantly like there was someone in their class that was getting a divorce every year. It was an epidemic. So
Right.
we end up going through the divorce thing when the kids were in middle school, and these women all talk to each other. They sort of all know the same attorneys, and it's all we need to get a leg up on the divorce. You need to kick the man out. You need to assume the home. You need child custody. And then when this happens, you won't be a 40-something-year-old. You'll be a flirtatious 16-year-old once your divorce is done. And it's just become an epidemic, and the court system just favors women, and they just want to destroy the father in the process. And you look at the marriage rates today, people don't want to get married. The jig is up. People don't want to get married and end up in situations like this. So now we have a society of all these kids growing up without intact families. There's no glue to hold these kids together. And it's a repeat of the cycle. My kids today, they're teenagers, and they say, boy, I don't think I want to get married because I don't want to have this happen. And so it leaves a lot of trauma for kids. So we look at the trauma that we have going through this. We got married. You never think you're going to break a family up. And now you have to sell homes. Kids live in two different places. It's really tough on them. I mean, growing up, being a young kid is really tough. Teenager growing up, being tough, it's tough. And then you throw a divorce on top of it. What a way to screw up kids. And people say kids are resilient. I mean, if you believe in the CNN liberal doctrine, that's what they're going to tell you, but it's not the truth in reality. So, my rant on this is that this idea about the marriage, they want the wedding, but they really don't want the marriage. I mean, when you look at all the things that we fought over and things that we had. My ex took the wedding album on the way out. But
isn't that interesting? She took the wedding album even though she didn't want the marriage.
Right. She took the wedding album. And it's sad because I wanted some of those pictures because, one of my parents had passed away. So, I mean, it would have been nice to have some of those pictures and some of my relatives that have passed away since then. But it's a different world today. And I think young men today, young women, I think if you are getting married or you're thinking about divorce, I tell everybody, unless you have like $3 million in assets, don't ever litigate, mediate. And even if you have more than that, just mediate. Do not get these attorneys involved because they will wipe you out and you'll have no money for your kids to go to college. And these attorneys put us in a situation like that where they really cost us a lot of money until we were able to. I was actually able to break the stranglehold that they had, because what an attorney will typically do, if they got a woman that says I want a divorce and there's some assets there, they'll go for the restraining orders and they'll try to tie up the restraining order in a district court versus probate court, and then they'll try to extend it for over a year and keep you in the court system, sell homes, take your homes, put the home equity that you have left over into an escrow account so attorneys can use it as their own ATM. It's a total scam. So going into the court system is only good for attorneys. It doesn't help either person, and it certainly doesn't help your kids.
Well, it's a business. I mean, I've seen divorce court multiple times. It's absolutely 100% right. It is a business. Without divorce, there's no family court judges. There's no family court lawyers. There's no family court paralegals. It is an absolute business. What would you tell folks today if they're interested in marriage? Would you tell them to go take a day and visit the courthouse?
I would tell them to go visit multiple courthouses in your state. I'm in the Boston area, and depending if you go to Middlesex County or Essex County, there are certain courts, and one of them in particular in Cambridge, Massachusetts, you will find many judges there, female judges that are very liberal, feminazis that are, they identify themselves as social activists, even though they're judges. Many of them are anti-men. They will go in there, and women will have no evidence. Oh, the father is abusing the child. This happened, or dad was late, and they'll just make it just difficult and more difficult for the men to see their kids, get access to the kids, and it's very stressful. I've seen this happen to a lot of people. But I would not get married today. And if you do get married today, even if you don't have much going into the marriage, I would at least put together some kind of prenuptial agreement, identifying what you have, assets that you have that are separated, and get them properly separated. When you go into a court system in Massachusetts, they'll ask you, you'll hear the judge say, is this a short-term marriage or a long-term marriage? When I first heard that, I was like, short-term marriage? What's that? Well, anything over 7 years is a long-term marriage. And can you imagine that? 7 years. You get married for a couple of years, you have a couple of kids, your child may be 5 years old, going into kindergarten, boom, parents getting divorced. And nobody seems to see any problems with this today. I think unless the laws change, I would not get married today. I have cousins and with younger children. I have nephews, and they don't want to get married. They just see what the court system has done to their friends' parents and what's happened, and they just don't believe that this is a good thing to do. So they live together, just like in Europe. My family's from Italy, so they do this in vivo, where people live together. So they share a place together. They have a child, but the only thing that they have to worry about, if there is a breakup, there's not a divorce, they need to support that child. And it's not the legal entanglement that we have here. So I would not advise to get married today blindly like you and I did. I mean, we got married. We didn't have much. I had something. I had a few assets that I had coming into the marriage, but as you get into your 40s and 50s and you start making some money, all of a sudden, women look at the cash out as as a time to cash out with a lottery ticket. And they really do view it like that. I paid for nothing. I want everything. And they'll scorch the earth, and they'll burn all their money on attorneys for nothing. It's just amazing. I can tell you stories of the way the GAL works. I can tell you about the folks that you see with child custody and visitation centers and all the crap and things that they would put a guy through. It's just amazing.
Well, you know what? I mean, I was fortunate enough to have money to get me through a divorce, as you were as well, John. So there's a lot of guys that don't have the financial wherewithal. They try to defend themselves, or they try to take ways that doesn't cost a lot of money. The only way you can really be successful is to get the biggest, baddest attorney that knows everybody. Fortunately, my attorney was a referral from a sitting judge. You guys understand how politically correct lawyers and judges, they know everybody. It's all a big game. Now, here's one thing that really I had a problem with, which was when you're sitting in a courtroom, my anxiety, and I'm a pretty strong guy. You understand, folks, that there is somebody in a black robe sitting behind a desk. You've got your attorney, she's got her attorney, and they're both presenting arguments. That judge, if they don't like you, most of them don't like men, by the way, because the Duluth model has proven it. Most men could be, that judge can strike that pen and take everything, 80% of everything, if they wanted to. So when you marry somebody, you don't really know who they are until they're sitting in a divorce court. And I try to tell these guys, You could do all the things you want. You can hold all of the frame you want. That person sitting behind that, where you have to stand up and literally salute them when they walk in the damn courtroom. All rise. They can destroy you. If you have the wrong color tie on that they hate, they can make your life miserable. So the anxiety of sitting in a court, and I went to court 4 or 5 times. I dealt with motions. I dealt with everything going back and forth. Guys, you have no idea. Just the financial, the issues with custody, but the anxiety is what gets people in a way that's, I don't know. Did you experience that, John?
I had, I was with my kids 90% of the time because I worked at home. And at the time I wasn't working, I got hurt, but I was still taking care of my kids. But even when I was working at home, like I said, I had my kids 90% of the time. We ended up going to court over 20 times. And I had to go to a visitation center, and I had the GAL tell me I was never supposed to be there. I was there for 6 months. And then the visitation center, and then I had to go to restraining order hearings another 6 times, which she was a no-show. And then finally they ended up dropping it, and she filed violations of restraining orders. So I basically spend all this money just to defend myself.
Well, let's talk about that, John. Restraining orders. That is a tactic that is used 95% of the time. Why?
If you listen to Divorce Corp and you find people out there, you'll find there's a famous one where this woman's talking to an attorney about divorcing her husband, and the attorney says, "Well, just get him to hit you, and we'll get you kicked out of the house, and you can file a restraining order." What some of the scumbag attorneys do is that they will go in and she'll say, I'm afraid, and she'll go to the police, get an ex parte court order, get the man kicked out of the home, and then you don't even know this happened. 2 weeks later, you're in court, you're defending yourself on a restraining order hearing, and lo and behold, it's her divorce attorney defending her on a restraining order hearing. And they bring it to a district court, and the district court is separate from probate. So they get the restraining order. So now it's a different offense versus being in probate. And now you got a restraining order on you for a year. You can't see your kids. The kids are basically custody of the state. And she's controlling the home. You're not in the home. And now you're in a situation where you just got a district court restraining order. And if you go to the home or something happens, you're going to get arrested and end up in jail. The bad part about that, if that happens, they can file motions to go and sell homes, do whatever she wants to do while you are incarcerated. So in my situation, that's what happened. And then we ended up in probate. And the judge, each time we brought up situations of what was going on, why were the kids on the restraining order since he was with the kids all the time? And the judge said, I'm sorry, that's not my court. I can't hear it. This is probate court. That was a district court. And that's what they do. And incidentally, over time, that specific firm, this became such a problem that I'm not going to say what I did, but the judge ended up finding out that these people were doing this way too often. And it ended up at the district court. And the judge at the district court admonished this entire firm saying, you cannot bring probate restraining orders to the district court any longer. They were doing it and they were locking up cases. And I ended up making complaints, and I got it voiced, and I got it in front of a judge. I don't advise people to do all this. I don't advise people to find out, who their clients are and tell the clients what's going on. But these attorneys will come after you. They tried to have me sell and all my assets and turn them into cash. Real estate, investments, you name it. They wanted it all in cash, and they wanted to use it all as a bank account. And it wasn't a divorce. It became warfare.
That's absolutely. And you're dealing with an emotional opponent. Remember, emotions trump all logic.
Right.
You're coming up from a logical standpoint. She's coming from an emotional. So the logical notion of this is costing money doesn't really cross their threshold.
No, it doesn't.
The emotion, I want to win at all costs. I don't care what happens to my kids. Kids suffer.
Right.
Her money is dwindling because, it's as well, but the emotions are winning. And she's only going off emotions.
I looking past now, at this point now, I'm sure your ex and my ex the same way. They look at this and they say, my God, I shouldn't have done that. And it's usually a few years later, they realize that this wasn't a good thing to do.
2 to 3 years later is when they really understand. And that's what I've always said, John. It's always been, hey, men are literally, when a woman divorces a man, we are stopped in our tracks, okay? We can't eat, we can't sleep, we can't think. A lot of us drink. People take themselves out. But a woman's off running her own life because she can compartmentalize those emotions. That's just female nature, and that's male nature. And so 2 to 3 years later, the man hopefully has moved forward. He's concrete. That's when the wife begins to, oh my gosh, I did the wrong thing. That's when they start coming back. That's when they start reaching out differently. And they realize, fuck, I fucked up.
It's amazing that so many of them end up on these dating sites thinking, I'm 45, I'm 50, I'm going to go on a dating site and I'm going to meet Mr. Right. And they don't realize that it's basically, a pick up and fun kind of thing. And the majority of women I know who have gone through the court system, including mine, they look at this and they say, this was a big mistake. And they hurt the kids so much, they ended up screwing up their lives. I don't know many women that actually if it was an abusive divorce where somebody was, getting beat up, and Jimmy Superfly, headlocks or whatever, lots of abuse, that kind of thing, drinking, drugs, gambling, those kind of things. But in the normal run of the mill things, when you, like in our situation, we were just a normal family, and all of a sudden we're both being, treated as like criminal in the court system. My kids are asking what's going on with this whole situation. And I mean, just the weirdness of being in a visitation center and your own children looking at the people there and say, why are we here? We don't need to be here. Your own kids, young little kids. And, your kids coming in crying like, Dad, we have to move. Why is our house being sold? Why is this happening? And it's like, and I'm saying to my kids as they're crying, I'm like, nobody's selling my house. I don't know who told you that. And then I would get in trouble for telling my kids this. I mean, it's amazing. And you talk about the court system, the judge and the attorneys that were all involved, and I would see in the courts. I was on Facebook and I found the group that they all belong to. They all attend the same Christmas parties. They're all sitting there with, glasses of wine and champagne, taking pictures together. And these people are duking it out in a courtroom, but on the side, they're hanging out at Christmas parties. It's ridiculous.
It's a big, what? The best way to stay out of the courtroom is to not get married.
That's true. And if things don't work out, mediate, don't litigate, don't bring attorneys into your life. I mean, I've even asked my attorney one time, I said, so did you guys get together and look at our assets and ask each other, how much you want? Well, how much you want? And I didn't get a yes or no answer. I just got a look like, how did this guy really know this? Because they actually get mad when the other attorney was billing more than they were billing. My attorney got mad at me. The other attorneys billed almost twice as much. I said,
hey, John, every time they open an email, just to confirm that you're coming in is $100. Just for them to open, your paralegal is opening an email confirming what you told them the last time you were there.
Right.
I probably spent $5,000 in fees that were just probably multiply, they were billed multiple times for the same thing. I didn't complain because I had the best attorney. I'm like, you know what, $5,000 in the grand scheme of things, I'm not going to complain. I want him to just kill it, which he did.
Well, I want to tell you this. I have a friend of mine who's an auditor for attorneys. There is no legal auditing standard for attorneys. I have another friend of mine that worked in legal department at I think it was Oracle, and there is no way they can bill for their legal work that they do the same way divorce attorneys bill. There's no auditing, and if an attorney actually would have their attorney bills audited by an auditor, only 20% of those, or 30% of those bills would be legit. Everything is false. Like I knew one case. I saw one woman go into court. She had 3 attorneys with her, and they were all billing their hourly rate for her to go to court with them. And so I met this woman in court, and I said, "Do you realize what they're doing is wrong, and you are being overbilled?" And the overbilling was so bad that she actually figured it out, and she filed she filed a final complaint, and she ended up going to an arbitration. She got a lot of money back out of it because the board said, "Yeah, you can't be sending 3 attorneys into into court." The stuff that they do is just amazing in the divorce world. That's why I say you always want to mediate. But what happens in these situations? These women go into it saying, "I'm taking the kids, I'm taking the house. This is all mine. I want like 70%, and you can have like 30%." And what there almost needs to be like some kind of pre-divorce thing where if you're going to get divorced, you almost have to have like an app or something where you can look at what you have for assets in your kids and model a divorce before you go running to an attorney and say, "What am I going to get?" Because I'll tell you something. I've seen these women go to court. "I want everything. I want everything. I want 50." And then they get 20%, 25%. And they spent all this money for nothing. And now the animosity between 2 parents is lifelong. And that doesn't go away. You're better off not spending any money at all because it's going to hurt your kids, and you have no money to put your kids through college.
In the end, the man gets how it hurts the kids. I think the women are more emotionally based. It's how they feel in the moment. So it disregards. I mean, I think they have a little bit of pity for the kids, but not anything near what men are. And I tell you what, my divorce attorney knew everybody. In fact, the judge was real good friends with them. I mean, I went, if you guys are ever in a situation, find an attorney that's a recommendation from a judge. This is how it works. You got to know who you're playing against, and your attorney better knows all of the players. I remember walking in to my first initial temporary orders meeting. My attorney knew everyone. He knew the guards, the paralegals, opposing attorneys. 15 judges walked by, and commissioners. He knew everybody. I'm like, this guy knows everything. This is all I need to know. I'm going to pay as much. And I came out ahead. I got lucky. Actually, I got everything that was equitable and legal. I got 50-50 custody, no alimony, and obviously you split the assets in the divorce. Now, let me ask you this, John. You're Catholic. You got married in the Catholic Church.
Right.
I went to a Catholic wedding, and my buddy, it took him about 12 months because he had to go and meet with the priest at the parish and go through marriage training. Because as I understood, the Catholic religion, to get married in a Catholic church was such an endeavor, was such a commitment that if you divorced for irreconcilable situations, differences, you could be excommunicated from the Catholic Church. And I believe that changed in the last 15 years.
I think it's changed. Well, I do know a priest, and they have spent more time, the church has, they have spent more time today getting people to understand what marriage is about. And, the priest that I know said they need to make it more difficult in the Catholic Church to get married and easier in the Catholic Church to get divorced. And it's, the whole concept of the discussion that the women want the wedding, but they don't want the marriage. I got to bring up that part on the Coach Greg Adams show where you have that woman and the guy, they're standing there and it looks like he's signing like the marriage certificate, and she's throwing her arm up in the air like, yeah, he's signing that marriage certificate. And just this afternoon, I was driving back and I was going by City Hall, and there's City Hall. They're starting to light it up with all the Christmas decorations. And I thought to myself, I remember when I walked in that building and found out from someone that I worked there that my wife was in there getting the marriage certificate after she filed a restraining order, and I didn't even know what was going on. So the wedding is planned. I mean, the divorce is planned even like before the wedding. So the attorney told her, "You got to go get the marriage certificate." And I found out that she got it. I actually have a copy of it, of what the date was that it was stamped, and then when she signed, I actually got a copy of that. And you know, it was you get married in a church, and the one thing that you sign when you're there is a marriage certificate. And you think, what happens to this marriage certificate? You never see it again. It ends up at City Hall. It ends up in a concrete bunker underground somewhere.
You
And
never see it
the
yet.
only time they need a marriage certificate is when a woman files for divorce, or when whatever the divorce that's filed, and then they got to go dig it up and they bring it up. And that's when the marriage certificate shows up. And I'm looking at my signature. I'm thinking, I wish I didn't sign that.
Now, let me ask you this, John. You're absolutely right. My marriage certificate, I got it, and we looked at it one time, right? Would you do it again? And be real. Would you do it again?
I don't think I would get married again. But if we were together and we had kids, we would have to have some kind of agreement. Now, if we did break up, there would have been no court involvement. And since there were children involved, there was a limitation of what these attorneys can do since we weren't married. Without the marriage certificate, nothing could happen. Nothing. Without that marriage certificate, I wouldn't have been asked to, break up assets, sell homes, and all of this. It would have been clean and cut, and wouldn't have had this problem. And our marriage was past 7 years, so it was considered a long-term marriage. And I also had assets before I got married, and never thinking that this would be a problem. And the interesting thing was, when we got married, I said to my wife at the time, I said, "Well, this is my home. We're living here. I'm going to pay for everything because it's my home. I don't expect you to pay because I already had this piece of property." And she was okay with it. And when we moved and we were in a different home, my rental properties that I had, they paid for themselves and they were my properties. And she didn't care about them. But prior to the divorce happening a couple of years prior, she wanted me to sell these properties. And I didn't realize it at the time. She was already talking to somebody that said, "Hey, he's got these properties. You're not going to get anything from these properties. He needs to sell these properties while you're married and put them into some kind of joint account, mutual fund, or something. And then that money would be subject to 50%. So it was, I said, "Well, this doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to sell assets that produce income. I'm just not going to do that." But there was a time that she was lobbying my family. That I needed to sell property. I needed to do this. And, even my parents at the time were like, "Why would she want that?" And anytime I spent any money, it was, "Why are you spending money over there?" And it became something like every 6 months or so would flare up and flare up. And then when it came into to the divorce, we ended up going to 3 different judges, and then we went to a retired judge, and the retired judge said, "Hey, listen, these are his properties. He's had these before he got married. They pay for themselves. If he wants to give you something, he can give you something, but stop fighting and going to 3 different judges with the same argument." But, some guys might just say, "Oh, the attorney said I got to sell them. I got to, just sell them." And I don't listen to anybody. And luckily I had friends that I went to grad school with who were attorneys that did help me out when this was going on. But it's a real tough time. And when you're getting beat up in the court system and going through that emotional trauma, you can make horrible financial decisions. And I've seen it happen. And guys would say, "It wasn't my fault. I had to do it." Nobody didn't put a gun to your head to sell properties or to do what you have to do. But I have seen cases where judges have right from the bench, have signed deeds over. So a lot of crazy things can happen. So
That's a great segue into this comment by Joe Biden. Would a prenup solve a lot of these problems? Prenups are a false man's insurance insulation.
I say not entirely.
Correct.
A prenup can help, and if they're written correctly, yes, they could. I know of a case where there was a lot of money involved, and the prenup actually was written to a point, and the person signed off on it, where they were limited to what they can get.
Yeah, a judge has ultimate authority. Remember, there's a man that family court is not civil or criminal court. It's like traffic court. All right. Family court came about in the last 70 years. It's not even a real court. We think it is. It's more along the lines of civil court, but a judge can rule. There's no jury. There's hardly any jury trial in a court. You don't have 12 jury members to, you just don't have it. In a criminal court, in a civil court, you can't have 12 jury members. That's how our Constitution set up. The family court and traffic court are completely different. That guy sitting behind the computer can say, you know what? Apparently, the story that her attorney shared basically meant she signed the prenup under duress or stress, or she didn't know what she was signing. And that judge can rule in her favor and say, I'm ripping this paper up.
Yeah, when we were in court, every single judge did ask if there was a prenup in the case. And, my attorney would say, listen, who brought the assets into the marriage, who paid for everything, and the kids. Those are the three things that you really need to worry about. But and things are changing too with, the feminism thing. Someone had mentioned feminism. I just saw feminism go by here. There is, it's really changed. It's not like it used to be before. And I've seen a couple of cases where women are paying alimony. It's really interesting. Now, I mean, I'm in Massachusetts. Our courts are a little, they definitely favor women. There's no doubt about that.
Sure.
But in these, it's a kangaroo court in the family courts. What makes these things a jackpot money and cause a lot of harm for people is when you have attorneys that end up using district court restraining orders, because that becomes a criminal case. So now you're identified as a criminal. And actually, I was driving along. I got pulled over by a Massachusetts state police. Cop pulls me over and says, license registration. And I didn't know why he was pulling me over. And the next thing he said was, do you have any firearms in the vehicle? I said, I don't have any firearms. Why would you ask me that? He walked away, came back, gave me my license, and didn't tell me why he pulled me over. I thought that was a one-off event. And I ended up going over the border into New Hampshire, and I ended up getting pulled over by New Hampshire State Police. I wasn't speeding. I don't have any criminal record. I don't even own a gun. License and registration, okay. Sir, do you have any firearms in the car with you? I've never been asked this before. And I'm thinking, why did they ask me for firearms? Oh, let's see. 3 months ago, I got a restraining order on me. And now as I'm driving, they must be picking up my license plate number and pulling me over. And so the things that happen in your life with a district court restraining order, when you get turned in to be a criminal, it affects you in that divorce like you wouldn't believe. Now, yes. That's the scary part about getting married, and when you get these attorneys involved.
Yeah, those are the hidden costs of marriage and divorce. You're under surveillance. You're under emotional surveillance. You're under anxiety. You know what? Any time in a divorce or a post-divorce, they can file motions on your ass anytime. Greg Adams went to court 70 times, I think, within 6 years. And then finally the judge said, look, lady, I'm not going to read any more motions from you. You're whacked. And that's basically what happened. He was able to get out of it because the judge, after 70 wackadoodle filings, realized that this chick was just trying to shake shit up and literally costing the court and the county precious hours. So I'll tell you this, guys. I mean, I asked John if I would remarry. Now, we wouldn't be here. I would not be in this forum without my marriage or divorce.
Same here.
There are positives for guys that have gone through it to help others. Now, there's also, you've got FJT, you've got Timmy Kramer, you've got guys that have made it. We've got women in the forum that have said, you know what, feminism is destructive. Lisa Smith, Cesar, all types of women that are, as I say, they're of the 1% to 2%. But, you know, outside of marriage, marriage is not it's very rare that marriage survives. And I'm not anti-marriage. My parents have been married since 1968. You know, but they're from a different world. They're from a very different time. And I'm a supporter of marriage for people that might, that 1% to 2%, but it's extremely risky. It's extremely risky today. And if you go through it, the odds of you getting divorced are not 50-50. I'm going to say 80-20. And if you know what? Let's go even more. 90-10.
Yeah, probably is. You know, when we were in court, there was one time that the judge, you know, my ex's attorney was just so ridiculous. He would go and present the motion for the stupidest things, and then I would sit there and I would actually start laughing. And he would say, he actually would say, look at him, he's not taking this seriously. How can he be with his kids? And this guy was probably in his mid-30s, and I just looked at the judge. I said, Your Honor, with all due respect, how do you let people like this in your courtroom? I mean, this is just ridiculous. And the judge, we would get into these stupid discussions, and the judge would just look at my ex and say, ma'am, why is this case in my courtroom? And she said it more than 2 or 3 times. She was getting so frustrated with it. So it could be a judge that can help you. Sometimes a judge could make life difficult. It all depends where it is. But you know, you want to stay out of the courts. That's one thing I will say. And these attorneys don't care. These attorneys will take your money. They will look at your assets and say, I could make $100,000 on that. In fact, I got a story for you. I met some people in court that were going to work with my ex's attorney, and they were talking to them in court. And I said, listen, can I talk to you? Because they were talking. And I said, you know, they're going to take your money. This is what they're going to do. And this one person I met, she gave them a pretty hefty deposit, and she called and got the money back. And my ex was in that attorney's office, and the attorney was yelling and screaming my name, you know, effing John. And she didn't understand why. And your effing husband lost me a case that would have been worth at least $150,000. So I ended up talking to that woman, and I said, you know, he was going to take about $150K for your divorce. She says, no, it was going to be $25,000. No. That was just the opening. We're going to drag it out. There was going to be a lot involved with it. So these attorneys are not there to help you. They're not. You know, if you sit here and you look at this and you got, if your wife said to you, I want a divorce, I don't know one person that said, you know what, I'm glad I hired that attorney, and it ended up better for the both of us. It never worked like that. You waste all this money for nothing, and you end up destroying your kids, and it's such stress. The stress isn't worth it. The stress isn't worth it at all.
Yeah, the non-tangible outside of the financial is what will eat you up. And as I told people, you know, I spent enough to buy a brand new Porsche Carrera 911 4S Turbo. So
I spent $100,000 just to defend myself. And I would say to the judge, I said, Your Honor, this isn't really difficult. We don't need to be fighting like this. You know, we could put a man on the moon. We could figure out to have an agreement in 15 minutes of what it's going to take to settle this. And the judge would look at my ex and say, why is this case in my court? She controlled the case because she filed for the divorce. She filed the restraining order. It was her that needed to withdraw from the case to end the whole thing, And then she did, and we ended up settling after all the carnage was done. But it was a big mess.
Well, divorce is job security for those guys.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. Like I said, no attorney could get a job. No divorce attorney can get a job working at a law firm and bill the way they are billing and get away with it. And this is the fleecing of America. These people are taken from you, taken from your ex, destroying your kids, destroying your future, destroying your retirement, and these people don't care. And if I had to do it again with these attorneys, I would have hit them 100 times harder than I did to get them to stop. And I'm actually glad to say that I cost these attorneys on the other side more money and lost business than they took from us. That's what it took for me to get these clowns to stop. And I don't advise people to do this. Don't get in these situations. But when you have a woman that doesn't understand what's going on and listening to the wrong people, you can end up in a situation where you can lose your home, you can lose your life savings. These attorneys will tell you to put it on a credit card. They'll make you sign promissory notes. It's just amazing. You think the divorce is bad? Wait till getting divorced is not the problem. It's dealing with the attorneys in the court system. That's what makes men's you regret all this. Yeah.
And then post-divorce, kids, it breaks my heart having to have my kid have 2 Christmases, 2 houses, 2 bedrooms, 2 everything. I mean, that's not normal, guys. That's not right. That is not right. Anyone listening to this, their kid that's got 2 bedrooms, no, right there, it's difficult. So
the other thing I want to mention with the children quickly, is your children will suffer an arrested development. If this divorce happened when your kids were 10 years old and you look down the road 15, 16 years old, their development stopped at 10. They've been traumatized by this. And I see it in my own kids. I see it in other people's kids who have got divorced. It really affects it. And if they really look at the stats of all this, they would see there's a different story out there. It would be great to have a live stream, is to actually hear women that got divorced who would actually come out and admit that they regret what they did and how it hurt their kids, how it hurt everybody. I mean, you're never going to get women to regret it. I mean,
that would be a unicorn story, John. That would be.
Could you imagine?
Man, I would be up front and center. I would be like, I'd arrive 3 hours early just to get the front row seats to that. But you're right. I mean, in the end, it's very difficult for accountability, and we go back to this whole issue of marriage and divorce, and I wouldn't be here without marriage or divorce. I love my kids. I would, if I had to go, if there was a time machine, I think I've mentioned this multiple times, if there was a time machine that showed up right now, I would jump on it. And the only reason I would jump on it, gents, is this, because I hate the fact that my kids have to suffer through their biological mother and father, whom they both love, or they all love, both of us, dealing with the situation. I have a really good friend. He's 47. His parents got divorced when he was 10. He's had digestive issues ever since. He's always sick. He says, the divorce of my parents destroyed me. He's very successful. He's worth about $12 million. Been very successful, but his marriage is on the rocks right now. I've mentioned him a couple times. But he has suffered since his relationships with women has suffered. He's had medical issues. Divorce affects kids like you have no idea. I know women who will not have kids because they came from divorced families. It's not good. Divorce is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I've been through the death of several friends of mine. I've been through the death of relatives. My father-in-law died. Divorce is what kind of death is finite. Death is finite, right? It's over. You got to get through the grieving process of someone that died. It's really sad. It's really, challenging. But divorce, you got to deal with her for the rest of your life. And that, folks, is, you got to be strong mentally and emotionally. How would you talk about that, John? Dealing with the fact that your kids are like my kids' ages, they're launched basically. You're going to, when your kids have grandkids or kids, or if they get married, you're going to have to see her again. Or if they're in the hospital, maybe something happens to them, they get in a car wreck, you're going to have, obviously big bedside. What do you think about that?
Well, I look at my kids because they're entering the time where they're going to college. And if they were involved with me on a daily basis, I'm, their mom is just more passive. I'm way more aggressive. I would have had them, applying to different schools, and we could have got them into better schools, would have had more money to do things if we didn't get divorced and had to live in 2 different places, expenses and all that go into it. It really affects the kids. I mean, I see it in my kids today. If anybody that's listening that's here, that's on this, my ex did not understand the court machine and how it works. If you have somebody that is on the ropes about getting divorced and you watch Divorce Corp and you actually learn about this and you actually learn what the divorce machine is about, it'll sway you to not go in that direction, and it'll sway you to mediate, but it also will sway you to think about it. Is this the best decision for us? Once you get attorneys involved, it is just warfare. And at that point, there is no reconciliation. Everybody gets hurt. Now, if we had a divorce and there weren't attorneys involved, and we actually had a plan, the kids wouldn't have been affected in the way that they were affected. You don't put young kids into a custody battle, send them to visitation centers. And I don't know if you were involved with that. I know Coach Greg Adams was involved in this.
Right.
It just affects the kids like you guys wouldn't imagine. And here I am, not understanding what's going on. And I got these attorneys, one attorney telling my attorney saying, I need to move that property so I can get paid because my ex wasn't paying her attorney. So they were trying to force me to sell properties. They were trying to force me in contempt to sell a property. They were lying and said that the house was in arrears. I mean, I had to get a bank involved. I had to go to the board of bars to get help for what was going on. It was absolute hell. Most guys would have just signed the papers, sold the house. All the equity that was in that home would have ended up in an escrow account. And every month the attorney will show up and say, oh, yes, I'm here to get funds released on bank number 12345 for $20,000. And he shows up with his nonsense report, and he's just taken from you, taken from your kids, and they're going to gut that bank account. And at the end of the day, there's going to be nothing left. They're going to keep you in the court system. And then they're going to say, well, you got no money left, so go figure this out on your own. I mean, it was at the point where I said to the judge one time in court, I said, if we showed up in this court and I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment with $25,000 in credit card debt, nobody would care about me. Nobody would care about my kids. And there was complete silence in the court. Mm-hmm. And actually, I'm actually astounded that I didn't get, I don't know the term that they use, where you can't go into the court because you end up talking too much. I mean, my ex's attorney, some of the crazy things they'll do, they'll have you hire a forensic accountant.
Oh yeah, mine did that. Sure.
Yeah. So I really got them on this one, because that I know people, and that's sort of my background in finance. And I had said I found out about it, that they had it, and I found out that there was a charge for it, and we were in court. And I remember asking the attorney, and I said, a forensic accountant. I said, let me ask, what did you find suspect on my financial statement that you needed to get a forensic accountant? I said, I don't have a cash business. I'm not a professional gambler. What are you looking for in my financial statement that required you to get a financial, to get this looked at like this? And he couldn't answer it. And I said, Your Honor, this is being paid with marital assets for this audit. And I'll tell you what, for our assets, for what we have, this better not cost more than a couple of grand. Come to find out, the judge says, well, how much did this cost? And she ended up paying close to $10,000. And I said to the judge, so the forensic accountant probably got $2,500 for this. Where did the rest of the money go?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the opposing attorney, and he went into this rant of defending himself. What did he do? He brought his buddy in, charged her whatever it was for the forensic accountant, paid the guy a third of it, and he put the rest of the money in his pocket. That's the things that they do. And there was no value to it. And in the end, I got access to the forensic accountant. I broke the thing apart, and it showed that I paid for everything. So she shouldn't have even got it. It destroyed her case.
The funny thing you mentioned, John, the forensic account, mine got it. I think she spent $2,500 on this accountant, but they're only going off the statements that you provided for discovery. You have to do that as you are the petitioner, the respondent. You have to give solid financial, all the accounts. If you don't give all the accounts and the judge finds out, you're going to prison for a felony, right? So her forensic accountant didn't even find 3 accounts that I had.
That's crazy.
So you're absolutely right. It is, the forensic accountant is basically, I got a law degree just going through divorce. I could be a divorce attorney based on what I learned, right? This is par for the course. This is a page out of the notebook that women use. They use the police to get you on some sort of
it's all the flying monkeys.
They want your back against the wall, so they try to do that. Mine did that, nothing happened. They use a forensic accountant. They try to use the kids against you, that you're not a good parent. I remember mine put in the paperwork that I never attended my kids' baseball, little league, basketball, soccer games. I was the coach of 70% of all 3 kids' teams. I had pictures and trophies as Coach Rad.
But listen, believe all women.
And that, you know how much it cost me just to present all those trophies and pictures to my attorney? Probably $5,000.
That's amazing.
And then, obviously, the greatest thing my attorney said to me when I went in that first initial meeting, when I wrote my retainer, when I wrote my check for the retainer, it was $5,000, I can't remember. He said, "Who tells the better story wins. I am going to tell the story of you, Rad." Her divorce attorney, I never heard of her. She had a woman divorce attorney that friggin' caved. Horrible. We had a woman commissioner. In fact, my ex went through multiple attorneys, and it's always this: whoever tells the best story wins.
Well, what the attorneys do is the attorneys will jockey with the judges to become like a discovery master on other cases. So you're in the courtroom and you see the opposing attorney, you think they're in front of the judge, and that's their only time they're in front of a judge. But they're working on other cases, being a discovery master and helping on other cases, and they're working with the judge.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's there's a lot that goes on there. And, they can lie all they want, but when the lies are shown and they're proven, it doesn't look good. My ex went to court and said, I have access to a gun, that my father had a gun. Well, my father and my uncle, they used to hunt. And I remember growing up, they would hunt deer, they would skin deer. And, we used to have deer. I mean, they did that growing up in the old country, and they did it here. Well, my dad and my uncle probably have not gone hunting since the late 80s, early 90s. And my dad got rid of his gun, and he hasn't had a gun for a better part of, we're talking well over 30 years now. So she went to court and said that, that I had a gun, and they said, what's going on with this gun? And you make a comment like this, you are accusing somebody to have access to a firearm.
Yeah.
And my dad has not had that gun for 30 years. He handed the gun in 30 years ago. And nobody checked the facts on it, but they took their word on it. So, it's because the attorney that was in my case, he always jockeyed himself to be on other cases and to be a discovery master. He got preferential treatment in that case, in my case, to beat the crap out of me until all the facts came out. And it turned out that my ex was lying about a lot of these things, and he represented a woman that was lying through the whole case. And in the end, the judge ended up forcing a settlement because she couldn't take it anymore. Right? It was just, but you look at this, we're talking about the wedding, we're talking about divorce, and the wedding isn't all that bad. It's the breaking up of the family and the divorce. And I have never seen, to get married is a real, I wouldn't say difficult thing. You go through a lot, you get married, whatever, you have to have, arrangements. But man, the work that women do, and I have to say women because most of the time it's the women that are hiring these attorneys, but the work that they have to do, the mental gymnastics, getting the paperwork, forensic accounting, driving kids to, dropping off and doing all this work, and they spend 2 years of this, spending all their money. What did they gain out of it? It's like, and then you look back at it, you say, I was better off being married than going through this. The divorce was worse than getting married. And I know people even in my family that got married in 1997. I got two, actually, they got married. They're cousins of mine, got married in the same year, and both divorced. And the wives now look at this and say, well, what the hell did we do? And it's all the same thing. The kids get older. And it's the mommy experience now that, it's focusing on the kids, and they all do the same thing. They got divorced and they go on these dating sites and they become serial daters. And then they realize, what the hell did I do? I see the pattern play out over and over again. That's why it'd be cool to get a live stream of boom to bust to just, greater bust for these families and women. And I'll tell you, you look at society, I look at what's being built up in my area. There's no homes being built. They're all condos, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 1,000, 1,500 square feet. And they're all single people living in these places. And we don't have a society where children are being born and have the glue of the family like I grew up with, like you grew up with, Rad, with your parents. And I feel bad for kids today because they're not having this. And we create a generation of people getting divorced, which creates more divorce, which is just more of this generational divorce. It's just a bad thing for our society. And I really wish that, because if these women are filing the divorce, they're not going to stop filing them. But, it's just too sad because we're really destroying the lives of these kids. And I see it in too many times. But
you know what I say, John, and I appreciate you being here and sharing your story. What I say is this: when I look at my kids, I see a light out. Light out in their countenance, and that is what tears me apart. Now, mom and dad, we didn't make the marriage work, but they are the casualties of that. They don't want their parents separated. If my parents I remember my parents used to fight. My sister and I would sit on the stairs. I was maybe 10 or 11. She was 9. And we'd be so sad. Is dad and mom going to leave? Are they going to break up? It was like the worst thing. We would literally have anxiety back in the late 70s, early 80s. And it's just not good. And, when I say, people ask me all the time, hey, Rad, would you do it again? I'd be, no. Even though I love my kids, I don't want my kids to experience what they've gone through in the last 6-7 years.
No, it's tough. My kids, I spent so much time with them. I'd be out on my tractor and I couldn't get anything done because they'd hear me outside and they'd want to jump on and come on for a ride. And we were together all the time. And even in the morning, if we had time, if I was available, I'd take them for breakfast or we were always together. And, we had a tradition the Friday after Veterans Day, because we had to honor the Veterans Day. But Friday after Veterans Day, we would start decorating for Christmas. All the lights would go outside, but they wouldn't be turned on. And we'd have all the Christmas decorations up. And, they've lost a lot of that. And when my kids were going through, elementary school, even in middle school, they would tell me, oh, so-and-so's parents are getting divorced. And I'd see these kids and they would be like really sad. And, oh, dad, so-and-so was crying in school today because they don't see their mommy or daddy anymore. And I saw this and I'm like, oh, wow, that's really bad. And then 5 years later, we're going through this. And all of those kids that got divorced, I saw it happen. And, I saw a lot of those kids when they got out of high school, when they graduated and, only one parent there kind of thing. It's sad. It's our society today. My mom said to me, she didn't hear about divorce until she came to this country. Imagine that.
Imagine that. Divorce is the worst word literally in the dictionary. It is the absolute most. I hate that word. I hate to think that word. I hate to even verbalize that word. The repercussions of what that word brings to me is not good. And I didn't get married to get divorced. You didn't get married to get divorced, but that's what happened.
Right.
And when we talk to these young guys, and there's a lot of guys that are realizing they're single. They're like, I'm not going through it. My uncle got divorced. My dad got divorced. They've seen countless people get married, get divorced. They're like, I'm not doing it. The reality is this, guys, it's too risky. I'm not anti-marriage, but it's too risky today. It's really too risky. And if you take that risk, the likelihood of you making it, 50 years. My parents have been married, 52 years? No, 54 years coming up.
Wow.
Your parents have been married, 60 years?
Something like that, yeah.
That doesn't happen. They have what's called a starter marriage.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, Rad. So if you meet somebody today and they have children, because we are older, so it's very likely if we meet somebody that they're going to have kids. I mean, how could you look at any situation today at our age and say this could be something permanent when you had what you thought was permanent and that got blown up, and now you have somebody that you meet that they potentially were married and they ended up divorcing their spouse. I don't feel valued as a person. I feel very disposable in this world.
I'm anti-marriage, not because I hate marriage, but for me, I already did it.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with the court ever again in my life.
No.
I'm not going to live with someone ever again. Maybe if I'm 80 years old and someone wants to take care of me, maybe a 50-year-old woman wants to take care of, great.
Well, you can get the woman that Coach Greg Adams is going to get the I forgot the name there. The from which side of the community that he's going to bring in to take care of him.
Right. But the reality is this. You know what? I've already been through it. I know what it's like when you live with someone. When you're with each other all the time, dopamine wears off. Familiarity breeds contempt. Contempt brings divorce or breakup. So why not have somebody, if you really want to get in the dating market, live apart, do your own thing, enjoy each other when it comes, live on your own terms. She lives on her own terms, and great. If you don't want to do that, great, be a monk. I don't advocate anything. I advocate the fact that men should decide after their awareness has been awakened how they live their life. That could be relationships. That could be, I'm going to start a new career. I'm going to be a truck driver. I want to travel the world. I want to do something different. It could be, you know what, the government. The red pill opens up everything.
Well, somebody commented on Ling Ling bringing the applesauce. That's right, Jerry. You got it, man. Rad, what's happening in Europe, and I see this with some of my relatives in Europe, they're not getting married. They're staying together. They have a child, and they, what they live like in vivo. They live together, but they're not married. That way, they don't have the paperwork, like I pointed out, the marriage certificate, that the woman becomes an agent of the state, because most women will divorce. The men will typically not divorce. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But the idea of what's happening in Europe, I think that's going to make its way over to here. I think that's going to be how men are going to be able to survive in this world and not end up being fleeced by the courts. And I do think in time people have talked about a bachelor tax. I could see that happening to some degree.
Well, there already is a bachelor tax. Single people pay more. Their deductions is not even close to where the marriage.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Oh, a tax on top of a tax, because this country, the way things are going here right now, especially with the administration that we have right now, I mean, they're kind of handcuffed to what they can do with interest rates. I think we're just going to get taxed to the bejesus on everything, and that's how they're going to make up for them not raising interest rates, because that would really affect so many people. And if you look at this and you say, if they do this, how is it going to affect women? Because if you look at the politicians out there, they're really catering to the broken families, or the head of households, who are mostly women today, when they take the kids, and that seems to be the audience. It's sad. It's sad. I mean, if anybody has not been to a probate court or a district court, you got to go in there and look at some of these cases where, even if they're unmarried, you see women there that have 2 or 3 kids from 2 or 3 different fathers going in there and looking for child support. And, husband, father A can make 20,000 a year, father B could make, 100,000 a year, and C could make 300 grand. And it's just amazing how they can go collect all this money from all these people, but they never got married. I mean, that's really more of a different part of society, but there's so much of that going on, and our system encourages it. And that would bleed into, our families and our marriages, because I never intended to, I never knew that my ex could become the agent of the state. But it's just amazing how it's the way it goes today. And that's why men today are seeing this happen. And they're saying, I don't want to go there. Like I said earlier, I have nephews that they don't want to get married. They don't see the reason for it. Because you get married and then all of a sudden you're in the court system, and it could be 2 years.
I got a buddy that spent over 600,000 so far, still not divorced. They got some weird.
Oh my God!
They got a weird divorce where they're divorced, but financially they're not. It's called a. God, what the hell is the name of it? It's. I'll have to figure it out. I can't remember, but it's this weird divorce that they can go remarry someone, but their financial assets are not, litigated yet. And now he's representing himself. He's like, I can't spend another 600. She just will not relent. I mean, it's over the lawnmower. It's over the edger. It's over the, Vitamix. That's where they're at now. I mean, my buddy told me the greatest thing ever: stay strong, hold your ground. She'll eventually cave. Took 29 months and she did that.
Yeah, well, you know what? You come to find out, when you go after these attorneys, the way it hurts them the most, they'll cave too. I know of a case that both parties end up spending, well over $1 million combined for a divorce, and all it did was just hurt the both of them. I mean, they had some money, but I would say that it was about 20% of their net worth went to attorneys to get divorced. And it was just fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. And they just wasted all this money for nothing. There was, businesses involved. And it's always best to just, come to some kind of, agreement. People think that I'm going to get an attorney and I'm going to go after this, but it never works like that. That only works in movies. It doesn't work like that in real life. But they're not going to tell you that. The attorney's going to say, oh, we're going to fight for you. You're entitled. That's the one thing I heard. One word that I never heard in my life until we went to court: entitled. I'm entitled to this. I'm entitled to this. I'm entitled to this. And I'm entitled to have the kids. I'm entitled to have the home. I'm entitled to have all this money. I've never heard that word until she spent, an hour with an attorney. And it's just the entitlement.
My attorney said that women believe their kids are their prizes that they won.
Right.
Which is the same thing as entitled to, because, hey, I appreciate what my ex-wife and the mother of my kids did. She was an amazing mother. I've talked about it. She did great as being pregnant, going through those issues. Great. But it took two of us to build a family. And that's what's happening with women. They believe that they own the kids.
Right. And a lot of times, I hate to say it, I see this a lot. If there's a husband, cheating, a woman files for divorce, that happens. But I see a lot of times, and I've heard Greg Adams say this a few times, women today want to keep their foot on first and steal second, where they want to be married, they want to have affairs, they want to do things behind the husband's back, and they think they can just get away with it. You don't like it, divorce me, and we'll just go to court and we'll just fight it out. I mean, I have a buddy of mine who's got some serious net worth, and he met this woman, and she wanted to get married, and he says, "Well, if we get married, what happens if we, it doesn't work out and we're going to get divorced? How are we going to handle this?" She says, "Oh, well, that's simple. We'll just get attorneys and they'll just work it all out for us." Now, this woman was already married and she
Ouch.
got assets from a previous marriage, and she found a bigger fish and she was going to do the same thing. I mean, I wish
Well,
I could find some good, solid ideas. I'm bringing out all the bad ones that I've heard recently, but it's out there.
and I'm not a fatalist, and I've talked about this multiple times. There are marriages. I'm going to give it a 1%, and maybe a 0.5%. There are some marriages that I've seen. I have a friend that remarried, and they're doing great. Now, does that mean they're going to be great in 10 years? Who knows? Everybody changes. We all go through different stress levels, medical issues, and so forth. But they've been married 3-4 years. They're doing great. That's not common. That is very rare in today's world. You can't. We live in a world, and this is why this is why I started my channel 2.5 years ago. I said to myself, I want to make a channel where I can share my experience so other people understand if they're going to encounter a potential marriage or get involved with a woman that has kids or get a woman that is madly in love with you. This information is saving lives. It saved my life. It probably helped you, along the way as well. I mean, I wasn't to the point where I was self-deletion, but, I had thoughts of, not the greatest thoughts. And I wanted to share with those from somebody that survived this that says, hey, you've got to understand you're against the wall. And if you get to court, the marriage, having a wedding is what, 30 to 50 grand, unless you're like multimillionaire, but your divorce is 100 times that, if not more. And the money's nothing. It's the emotional stress that causes. And we talk about this all the time. We talk about guys that are self-deleting because they came out of a courtroom and they just lost 98% of everything.
I know of a case. I know a guy that is a psychiatrist who represented children in custody battles. He's been at this for a long time. I actually hired him for my case because the GAL was a psychologist. I actually hired a psychiatrist because I was being attacked on so many ends. I really needed somebody who can help me with this. And he told me about one case where the mother wanted the child, didn't want to give up custody, and the mother was convicted and tried to be an accomplice into a murder case. And the judge would not allow that and didn't grant the father custody at all of the child. And the woman who was part of this murder case was represented to somebody who was related to a former Massachusetts senator. So politically, I think it would have looked bad if the person lost the case, so the judge could have been swayed. But this guy was so distraught from what happened, he had a heart attack and he died from the stress. And the stress that you can go through in the court system is ridiculous. I knew of another guy that I met in the court system that ended up having a heart attack, ended up at Mass General. Then he ended up having a stroke for all the stress that he had going through this. So, and the attorneys don't care. They don't care. I knew of another case where it was the wife in this situation. She was suffering with pancreatic cancer and the husband was putting her through hell. It's just unbelievable that this is what happens in this world today. But the attorneys don't care. You will never get sympathy for an attorney. The attorneys they'll want to take everything you have, and if you've got $10 left in your pocket, but I'll tell you,
they'll take that, give you an IOU, and you need to give them an IOU.
Yeah, but if you know something, well, yeah, I would never pay. If you had attorney, you've had a bill to pay for an attorney, they would have to take me to court, have a judge actually approve that. But if you are in court and you think the other side is doing something wrong, don't be afraid to call your local board of overseers and ask questions about what's going on in your case. Many of these divorce attorneys, and I've seen this in many cases, you'll want to settle and mediate a case, and the other side, if you even send emails over or letters and say, I want to mediate this case, it's very common for the other side not to show that you want to mediate the case. They'll just say they don't want to, they just want to go to court. They want to go to court. They don't want to settle this. They want to just stay in court. And that happens a lot, more times than you can believe. I actually know of a guy that that spoke French, and he ended up was going to court, and this guy ended up he was disabled, had a heart attack. I told him, you need to get a mediator and because it wasn't a restraining order, and you need to get the mediator to write a letter to the attorney and then write a motion to court. The judge can't make you mediate, but just say, I want to mediate. And he kept presenting it, and he says, listen, I want to mediate. We don't have the money for this. And the judge finally said, he makes a good point here. You don't have the money. Why don't you folks consider mediation? I can't make you go to mediation. Well, I got that guy out of the court system. I saved this one guy from losing his house to this attorney that tried to force him to sell his home to pay for legal fees. So the more you learn about this, if you go through a few cases, you help people out, it's not such a bad thing. There are some good stories getting people out of trouble that think they're going to lose it all, and they could lose it all because they don't know. And these attorneys will prey on, these, even if you're, if you don't speak, if you don't understand if English is not your primary language, if you're in the court system, they don't care. They'll do whatever they need to do. And if it's a guy, who cares? These attorneys will just go up and down one side and down the other. They don't care.
So the health issues in a divorce for a man are absolutely astronomical. I know a emergency room doctor when I was in Oregon jumped off a 3-story parking garage, in mid-divorce, killed himself. Now this guy's making $500,000 a year. It doesn't matter how much money, how much status you look at. Dr. Dre, he was in the hospital with an aneurysm. He almost died from a brain aneurysm. He's worth almost $1 billion. She's going to take half of that, which is a substantial amount, but he's still going to be left with $500 million, right? He suffers. Guys, this is real shit. We're not talking about things that or issues that are light. These are extremely heavy. If you're not strong enough, you will be like 4 of my friends, and probably multiple friends of John, that have taken themselves out. We're seeing in the comments, chest pains, guys going gray, red mind man, going gray at age 28 going through this. Stress will literally take off a third of your life. And so it's not that I'm anti-marriage or anti-love or relationship. I'm logical. Don't do it. Because the reality is everything's against you.
Lisa Smith brings up, in sickness and health means stand by your spouse through hell and high water. Well, Lisa, like I said, I got sick, and my ex never came to a doctor with me, and she dropped me off at the divorce count, at the clerks at the divorce court. I mean, and I have said to her, if you got sick, do you think that I would have done this to you? And I've said it to her entire family. At the time, I got really sick, and I didn't think I was going to make it, but I would have never done that to her. I mean, if something happened to her, but I see that a lot. And usually when someone gets sick, I will say it's more often than not, it's the men that leave when a spouse gets sick, not the women. But it's not common for a woman to leave a sick spouse. But today it doesn't even matter. They don't need an excuse. They went out to lunch with somebody, and someone showed them a dating site, and that you'll find some divorce. And this is what I see. It's like, this is how the divorce bugs goes crazy. You'll have one woman that'll go get divorced. They'll go on Match.com or Plenty of Whales, and they'll show all their female friends, oh, I'm talking to this guy sliding, and it looks like eye candy to these women, and it starts putting ideas in their head. I've seen this with my ex. I've seen it out in public with people that I know, where divorced women are showing the other married women, the people that they're talking to online. I mean, I've never seen anything like this before, where someone will try to glamorize their single life by showing a married person what they're doing on a dating site. I think it's outright embarrassing, but that's the world we live in.
Yeah, mine at the end within the last 2 years, as we were living in the same house, she started hanging out with a lot of divorced women.
Yeah.
And I think that also contributed, because the hive mind is fully functioning. Folks, don't forget that the 98% that I talk about are operating from the hive mind operating system, which is they follow exactly what their peers, their neighbors, their sisters, their friends do. So if they're divorced, they're going to get divorced too.
Brad, we were at CCD when the kids were going through CCD. There was a few women that were bringing their kids there. They got divorced. And my ex, that was never talking to these women, all of a sudden it was like their long lost friend. Oh, we need to get together. We need to do this. And it's like, why are you talking to this person? Well, I can't talk to her. I said, well, there was one woman, I remember. I said, well, I know they got a divorce, and I know the reason why, because she cheated on her husband. And, but she had to become friends with this person, and, probably needed to find out what she did on the divorce. And it's funny, but you look back and you have this implicit trust with your partner. But when you look back in time, and maybe you have some phone records, and you look at the phone and you go, what phone number is that? And you throw it into Google and you're going, wow, that's an attorney. And you throw this number in, and, wow, that's an attorney. And you're thinking, this was going on a year before the divorce happened.
Yeah.
And the divorce will be planned 2 years prior to,
Yeah, and I said, you're absolutely right, John. I always said that divorce is planned during the engagement. Real quick, I want to shout out One Fast Act. He's talking about something really important here. Red pill rage can get dangerous. Keep a level head, brothers. Yes, it can. You're seeing it in the news. There's a guy here that was getting divorced by his ex-wife. He flew his Cessna plane into the house. He died, but he didn't fulfill his objective. Guys go nuts when they start losing everything. So great word of wisdom with One Fast Act. I mean, you guys have great comments in the section.
One Fast Act, I want to make a comment on that. I'm glad you brought that up. One thing that this has done for me, and I think Rad will say the same thing, this has changed my life in the sense of all the things that I wanted to do that I didn't do because I was married and taking care of kids. I now can do. And some of the things that I wanted to do to, in business wise, investments and things that I'm looking at, I could never do while I was married. And it's so opportunities open up. And I think sometimes as guys and even women, your partner is so part of your life. And then when this happens, it's like, what do I do? What do I do? And your world's falling apart. And the only thing that will get rid of that is time. Time has to happen. And you have to go out, you have to walk, you have to ride a bike, you got to go running, you got to go work out, you got to get out of your head, maybe join a men's team, a woman's team, and start talking to different people and start learning new things. If you've never read before, if you only read like Kindle, start reading books like you used to do years ago before we had those devices. Do things that you did 10, 20 years ago that brought you joy. I mean, if you have a basketball in your trunk or whatever, and you see a rim at a local park, go out and start shooting some hoops. Do things that you did years ago and get those neurons in the brain that you haven't used in a while to start thinking about things. My best thoughts about post-divorce and post things that have happened when I go on these 2 mile, 3 mile, 5 mile walks. I think about a lot of things that I want to do. And I'll take my phone and I'll actually record some of the thoughts that I'm having. And I'll play it back maybe a couple of days later. And I've got some really good ideas about things that I never thought about doing that I want to do today. So, which is great. But now as you become a divorced person and now you're single again, now you become targets for other women though. And Rad, at our age, when you start meeting women, now these women are looking for, they're looking for a retirement plan.
You know what? It's funny. I mean, even though we've been through a shit show, life is great because I'm living like I did when I was 17. I'm listening to bands. I mean, I go to Guns N' Roses. I do the things that I love doing when I was pre-marriage. And guys get stuck on the fact that, and I was very similar. The rejection is very psychologically challenging. And so you have to move. I tell people all the time, if you're feeling down, get the fuck out of your house. Move. Go to a new store. Go to a new restaurant. Go to a bar and watch the Bruins play, right? The Red Wings. Whatever you got to do to make a new experience that you've never been is imperative. Walking it, I went on an hour walk. I try to do an hour walk a couple times a week. But doing those things to keep you, in the end, you will win if you do these things. And remember, I'm going to make a video on this in the next couple weeks. That new guy that she monkey branches to, all she's doing is transferring all that data to the new guy, and she's going to get irritated with him 100 times quicker and dump him for the next guy. So feel sorry for the next guy she monkey branches to. I mean, like, if you can really get to that point, this is great. Now, did we get married to get divorced? No. Let me ask you this, John. We're coming on an hour and a half. I'm still good. If you need to drop, that's cool.
No,
but when did you first think about this? This is an ambiguous question. When did you really, truly know who your wife was?
When I walked into the courtroom for a restraining order hearing, not knowing what's going on, and the judge looked at my ex and said, "How long do you want this restraining order for?" And she looks at me and says, "As long as possible." And she got a 1-year restraining order. 1 year. And I didn't understand what that meant. I thought there would be an appeal. I ended up firing the attorney at the time that I had because the guy was a total idiot. I hired another attorney, and at the time it was too late to fight that restraining order, which I would have won on. But when I got the transcripts of that and I got the recording, I listened to what they presented and the lies, I said, I can't believe she's doing this. And it just totally blew my mind. I went to court. I brought my siblings with me, and they were just like, she wants a divorce. Just have a divorce. Don't go through this crap. They saw right through what she was doing. And it was they were looking at this as a complete money grab. Take the kids. And she thought she was going to retire off of this. And, she just, and now when I see her, there's, I have to be amicable, but where's my trust level? Where's your trust level? You get married, you go to court, you go in the court system. Now you got two parents that have this animosity, and her parents got divorced. They had a lot of animosity. So now she repeated the same pattern. And now, my kids sadly are imprinted with this. So I think about, when did I know my ex? I knew that she was capable of doing this because her parents went through this. And I could not believe that she reenacted what her parents did. But I know people who are psychiatrists that are 70, 80 years old that have said to me, we call these people that do this type of thing time bombs, because they've had an arrested development at a very early age, and they end up repeating what they saw happen in their childhood. So as much as I was angry about all this, there's also a level of sympathy, because I didn't have that happen with me, but she had this happen. I grew up in a very different time where my parents had aunts and uncles here from Italy. So I grew up with a lot of older people, and there was a lot of love, a lot of support. And, I would grow up and like seeing people, and like they would come up to me and grab my cheeks. Hey, you're a good kid, and there was a lot of that, and I grew up where we would have these, family gatherings. The guys would go with the guys, the women would go with the women, that kind of thing. Or I'd be out with my dad all the time. I'd go to these clubs, these Italian clubs around the Boston area, and I'd see some of my old relatives or like relatives of my grandparents in the old country. And at the time growing up in the 70s, they would drop me, hey, here's $50, go buy yourself something, or $100. Now my parents would get mad, because I'm like, why are you taking $100 from this? That's a lot of money then. But there was this generation that really wanted to help the young people because they suffered so much in the depression, and they would talk about these things. So to have this huge emotional support growing up of what I had, and then going to court and seeing my ex recreating what she did, I'm like, wow, we really came from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
So,
Was she Italian, John?
Yeah, she was Italian. Yeah.
Catholic Italian, which is
very unlikely. Yes, this is not characteristic of it. This is more of a characteristic of this is this is living in Massachusetts and believing the feminist lies is what it is.
Absolutely. I mean, the hive mind, the media, social media, the reality TV, everything is geared to destroy the family. And if you think you're Christian, beautiful woman that never was a virgin when you married her is not watching this, you're mistaken. Now, the reason I brought that up was, that when did you truly know and meet your wife? I met my wife Actually, I met my wife when she filed for divorce and put the papers on my the countertop.
Wow, I didn't have papers. I was at my attorney's office and I was served by a sheriff that showed up with divorce paper. And it said, and I opened up the paperwork, it said lawsuit for divorce. And I was with my older sister and I said, look at this, she's filing a lawsuit for divorce.
You don't know your wife? You know what? I thought I knew my wife. I really did. She was the mother of 3 kids that I cut the umbilical cord with. I went through pregnancy. I went through the death of her father. We went through 3 states of living. I had no idea who the person I married until 19 years later. Think about that, gents.
That's amazing. I didn't talk to her for an entire year because we had a restraining order. So we finally had a meeting at her attorney's office, and we're sitting there. It's a big table. I'm at one end of the table. She's at the other end of the table. And attorneys come in, and I looked at her, and I have a restraining order on me. And I said to her, what the hell are you doing? And she just couldn't look at me. I said, and obviously they said, John, you need to calm down. I said, no, you know what? Since I'm paying for this goddamn thing, all of you guys are going to have to shut up and you're going to listen to me. This is a bunch of bullshit. I had my computer, opened it up. What the hell you want? Let's just settle this stupid thing and be done with it. And we came up with an agreement, what we thought was going to be an agreement. And I had said, well, I will sell the house. We'll do this and we'll split this. Well, her attorney behind my back and sits with her. Now, I thought maybe, okay, she realized that she made a mistake. She then signs paperwork to sell the house. And the attorney goes into court and files a motion to sell my home. I'm like, what's going on? My attorney calls me from court, says, you're supposed to be in court today. Do you know that? I said, no, I didn't know. When did this happen? Well, they filed a motion to go sell my house. And I thought all this shenanigans were over. I thought we're going to work this out. And she went into this like hyperbolic sort of attack to, sell the home, use the money to stay in court because she wasn't happy with what I was going to give her. I said, oh my God, I thought we just went through all this stuff. And I, like you said, I didn't know who she was. And then a year later, I didn't talk to her. And then we have a meeting together. And I thought we were going to settle things. We're going to work it out. We're going to have both sides settle. And she revved it up again, got the attorney to go to court. And then to come to find out later, the attorney said to her, he said to her in court, you need to sell that house because I need to get paid. And they wanted to use my home for a piggy bank. Basically, she owed the attorney a ton of money. And then she finally came to me and she said, I have to sell the house. I have to pay him all this money. I said, so you're calling me now and you're looking for help because your attorney wants all this money. I said, well, this is what we're going to do. And this is how it's going to happen. That attorney never got that money. She owed him well into 6 figures. He never saw a dime out of it because he should have mediated this case and he didn't. In the end, she came back to me saying, I need help. But it doesn't erase the fact that she did all this stuff behind my back and did this. And there's still, I don't trust her today. She only came back to me when when she wanted help and she got herself into trouble. So that is not someone who I would trust, because a spouse would come to you and confide with you in things and say, hey, I want a divorce. I want to work it out. You were lucky that your spouse actually put the papers on the counter. A lot of times today, when a woman goes to an attorney, the attorney's going to tell them, don't say anything. We need to get a leg up on this case. You need to file a restraining order. You need to take the kids. You need to be very aggressive. And a lot of these attorneys market themselves as high conflict divorce attorneys, especially for cases when women say, I want this, I want that. And they think because they don't have the assets, because they didn't bring the assets in, they think they're entitled to hire an attorney and to cause all this chaos, and it's going to end up to benefit them in the end. And you'll see that in movies like Divorce Court, but they won't tell you the behind the scene things that go on. I've learned so much of the court situation. I've seen a lot of cases. I've been involved with other people who've gone to court. I've been on men's teams whose wives have said, I'm filing for divorce. I just found out that I shouldn't be laughing, that there's a man that's going through a divorce. The wife is leaving him, but at least she says, I'm leaving you because I'm going to go be with a woman. That was a different one.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. So now, can you imagine that your wife's leaving you because you're going to be with the woman? Yeah, you've turned. You're in the mid-40s, and now you want to be with women.
Wow. So you mentioned trust. So tell me where you fit. Where does trust fit into your life now with a woman that you might have an interest in?
It's so hard to trust because I'm not going to say this whole red pill thing. You watch a lot of content, like all the things that you talk about, other channels. We're engaged with so many different people. Back in the day when I first started listening to Sandman, I think it was Big John, and then I started with George Bruno really early when George came on. I've been on with George Bruno, and then when Greg Adams came on, I think he had like 5,000 people.
Yeah, that's when I did it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, you start hearing about all this, and you can talk to a woman, and I see this today. I have a very hard time trusting because I catch them so easily in lies. And it's amazing how many of these women, they'll be on Facebook and they'll be posting stuff looking for likes all the time. I had one woman that was texting me, and then she decided to do a group text with two other guys that I didn't even know, and got into this discussion and asking questions. I'm like, what's this? Like three bulls in the ring looking to like do something with you or something? It was really weird. And I saw what was going on. I said, I'm out of this chat. So it's hard. There's always an underlying, I don't know. You're a swipe away from somebody, meeting somebody else. I'm not on a dating site. I refuse to do that. It's tough. It's really tough to trust. I think this world is so disposable. And if you meet somebody that's gone through a divorce, what's the likelihood that you're going to have any relationship with them? You're just the next guy in line. The idea that a woman, once a woman gets divorced and she meets a guy, the pair bonding is gone. And at my age, when I meet women, it's just almost impossible. It's almost impossible for them to pair bond. You'll find a few that have stayed away, but they've got not going to be on dating sites. But the trust thing is really hard today. How do you find it?
In the last 6 years, I've gone out with a lot of women that are divorced. I've only gone out with probably 4 gals that never had kids. 2 of them never got married. Those are even worse. But most of the gals that were married and had kids that were similar to my age, maybe 5 to 10 years younger, they all said the same thing. My ex is abusive, controlling. It's all the same. And I'm looking at it. She's like, how are you? I said,
abusive, controlling.
I'm the exact same thing that my ex-wife said about me. Isn't that interesting? What? You seem like a nice guy. I go, yeah, but I didn't give her everything she wanted. She wanted everything, and I wouldn't do it because we had 3 kids to raise and put them through college and everything. And now I became controlling. Now, there's something I wanted to bring up. There is now something that women are using in their divorce paperwork. It's called financial abuse. My attorney brought that up, and he brought up social media abuse. He said, I said, what is that? He said, well, financial abuse is when you don't give your woman what she wants in terms, maybe she wants a new car. You're not going to buy it. You're going to buy a 5 to 10-year-old car, whatever it be. But she wanted the brand new car. That's financial abuse. If she wants to take a vacation and you don't want to stay in that hotel because it's $1,000 a night, but you'll stay at $300 a night, financial abuse. That's now coming into the courts. Social media abuse. He told me that is becoming part of the playbook, which is he's not liking my pictures anymore. He doesn't give me attention on social media. This is all coming into the world we live in. It's a clown world. If you don't give your ex-wife or the wife that you're married to likes or responding to her social media posts, that's considered abuse. Look it up.
When I went through the court system and because I paid for everything, my attorney said, this is financial abuse. And I didn't say anything, but the opposing side said, how do you quantify that? And I just sat there. I didn't even look up because how do you quantify financial abuse? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I'll tell you what, but like you say, if when it's a man paying all the bills, there's no financial abuse. Right. But if financial abuse is if you can't make the mortgage payment and the woman wants a $400 Gucci bag and you say no, a man saying no is financial abuse.
Yeah, that's it. That's what he said. He said the same thing. If you let's paint the picture. If you give your ex-wife, if you give your wife or your girlfriend everything, she's going to despise you because you're a simp. If you give her nothing or little to nothing, you're abusive. How do you win? Jordan Peterson talked about that. Guys that give their women everything, the women don't like those men. And then they go out with these Chads and Tyrones that give them nothing, and they hang out with them for 90 days, and they don't like them because they don't get anything.
That's right.
It's a losing. The goalposts are constantly changing. So this has been a great live stream.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
What would you tell, John? You've got a great story. What would you tell guys today that are thinking, you know what, I might just find that one that's not going to do that?
Well, I never thought my ex was going to go anywhere. One time she said to me, well, where am I going? It's just amazing. Here I am, she's saying, where am I going? And I think back, well, you are already planning it. And they will show their cards, whether or not they think it, but they will. Like I mentioned, my ex wanting me to sell property, sell assets, that kind of things that were in my name. And they were all, prior to marriage. I had things that I had with my dad, and she wanted me to put her name on them, and which I wasn't going to do. So you'll see these clues. But today, if you really are going to get married, I would say you need to have, if you have assets, because it's all about money in the end. If you have assets, you need to separate them as much as possible, and you need to show that you spent money. You had some really good legal paperwork drawn up. If you've got property, that kind of thing, it has to be separate. You do need, in Massachusetts, people say, oh, they'll just rip up your prenuptial. Not necessarily. Even if they don't rip it up, they can't just totally ignore it if you have it. I've had some things set up with my children, and the attorney wanted to break trusts and things like that. And I said, if you decide to do anything to break trusts and break things for the kids, as soon as we're done here, if that's what you're going to do, I'm going to make a phone call and I'm going to tell my kids what's going on. And they said, sir, you can't do that because you have restraining order. I said, I'm going to tell my kids that their future is being threatened right now, and I'm going to do it. And they never, broke trusts or broke things that they had. So, I mean, you got to try to separate everything that you do have. And if you do marry somebody, I hate to say this, but don't be making $200,000 a year and marry a cashier. I mean, That's just not going to work. It's like, Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah, you're a cashier, but you want to.
Just follow Cosmo Kramer's advice about marriage that he gives to Jerry.
Oh, if you're doing time, she's there. You wake up, she's there, Jerry. I'm glad we had this talk. Oh, you have no idea.
Oh. And you know what? I wish that things were different. I wish that we could have been in a time where women and men could, cohabitate, be married, create families, grandkids, and build a legacy. But guys, it's just too risky. You're talking to two survivalists here and multiple men in the column, in the forum, that are talking about the nightmare of being married. Look at One Fast Dax relationship. Look at Father Saunders. 836 days without seeing his kids. And he adopted a single mother's kids and had 3 more.
I went 100 days without seeing my kids.
He's a good dude. This is what in Nebraska, for hell's sake. It's not Boston. It's not Seattle. It's not San Francisco. Nebraska. If it can happen in Nebraska, it can happen to you.
So it's interesting. If your ex knew the court trauma, if she knew the inner workings of the courts and what's going on, and she watched Divorce Corp, and she understood what really happens with the divorce machine in the court window, would she, one, have divorced you? And would she, two, have gone to court? And I've asked my ex that, and she says, I wish I never met that attorney.
No. Yeah. That was asked by a woman, a gal that I know. She asked me if all these women knew this, the repercussions 3 years after divorce, would they do it? I said, absolutely. They'd
really?
Accountability. Mm-hmm. There's very few. I mean, look at Kevin Samuel's show. He's been doing this for what, 1,500, a year and a half? And he still gets the same women that have watched his show. I've watched it, 2 weeks ago, a woman says, I've been watching you for, last year. I've seen countless women. She brings the exact same issues up to him. And he says, hey, you've seen all these women that have gone through exactly what you're talking about, and you want to do the same thing.
Yeah. And how many women do you meet today that how many women do you meet if you actually were to play along and say, I want to get married again? You would see a lot of women that, oh yeah, I'd like to get married again. What's the benefit for them to get married? Is to get access to your assets.
Take a look at this comment. Brandon Trueblood, 1,753 days without, oh my gosh, my heart bleeds. What
state are you in?
This is what I tell guys. This is what I tell guys right now. Eventually, crazy will rear its head. Kids are not stupid, as your kids and my kids realize. They're not stupid. They will figure out. I remember there was one comment on one of my videos, and a guy said, you know what? My mother divorced my dad when I was 6, and at 22, I finally realized that I was bamboozled and literally brainwashed by my mother, and I never talked to her anymore because me and my dad are in the greatest situation ever. 16 years after he saw his father. 16 years, folks.
That happened to Dwayne at Dad's Surviving Divorce, DSD, I think is his channel. I've been on his channel for a long time. If you haven't seen it, he talks about narcissistic abuse, and everybody calls themselves a narcissist today. I don't like that comment. I don't even understand it. And I think George Bruno, who is a psychologist, talked about that being like the most overused thing. I think George talked about that with his kids. I think he had some issues with his kids, with the wife and the brainwashing and things that happen like that. That's the tragedy of the whole thing, is the kids really become the casualty in all of it.
Yeah. And if women truly love their kids, they would understand how important a loving father is. And this is ridiculous. And the courts don't get it. That's why our prisons are full of 80% men, or 87% of all prisoners are men, based on this whole issue. Guys need strong fathers in their life. And when the strong father, again, I've always said the war is not on men, it's on strength. right? It's on strength within the family. And I say, the reality is, and when I talk to these guys, look at Brandon Trueblood, you hang in there. Hang in there. I had a guy in my column in a comment section say after 16 years, he finally saw the light that his mother had brainwashed him. She was crazy as fuck. And he now has the greatest relationship with his father. It was 4 years after. He's 26 now. And, shit turns around. I would take my kids back. I have a daughter that doesn't talk to me. I know what it's like.
That's terrible.
I know what it's like. So, you know what? You hold on. You be patient. Patience is your ally.
I want to bring this to the idea of daughters. I think when a young girl is, 4, I want to say, 3, 4, whatever. I think the mom is really important. Okay, growing up. I think once they're out of that Barbie phase and they want to, just do different things and not play with little fairy dolls and watch Disney movies, they're like bored of that. They want to do like real things. And my daughters, they wanted to go, outside and throw a football around. And, they lose so much not being with their dads. And I'm really sorry to hear that with your daughter, but they're going to come around. It may not be until she gets into her early 20s. Be patient with it.
Oh yeah.
My girls are teenagers, and it's they're coming around. I think they're realizing that what's happened here. They were brainwashed, by their mom and her sister and people like that. But it that only goes so far. And like I said, I have a couple of guys that I know that were on men's teams that are psychiatrists that were 70, 80 years old, and they told me it may take some time for them to come around. Hopefully you don't lose them for life. And I think, how old was your daughter, Rad, when you guys broke up?
16. So she's been 6 years. I mean, we chat, but it's not a relation. It's
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. When you were 12, when she was 12, 13, 14, 15, you were still together as a family.
Yes.
So you were with her through the formative years. So she's going to be okay. She's going through this little time, and she's going to come around.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think so.
And I'm looking at patience for me and time, and I'm going to be eventually female nature will rear its head and she will realize the importance of fatherhood. My middle boy didn't come around for a couple of years. Now he's coming around. My youngest has always been with me, but I'm telling the guys out there, Antonio Banderas, Brandon, hang in there. Write your feelings out in a journal, write letters, and have those letters sent or stamped, carbon copy. You got a whole list of how, you're communicating with your kids. You will eventually win in the end. And I've heard this from countless folks. And it's disgusting. Fathers are important pieces, and so are mothers. And when mothers alienate their kids, which happened to me, happens to 98% of folks, it's not good.
Yeah.
So
you've got to show your daughter lots of love.
Right now, she's at a stage in her life where she's doing good financially, and eventually, I think she's having a hard time dating because Princess Destiny syndrome does not. What's the word? What does it say? Is no respecter of women, right? It's everywhere. So I'm good. And the best thing you can do, folks, is work on yourself, build yourself up. So when they do come around, you're strong and you can open them up again, open arms. This is what separates men from destructive women.
Rad, is there, can you go back in time and look at things that were important with you and your daughter before the break happened? And is there something that's left that's like things that aren't Like, did they want to go like on long bike rides, or did they want to do
Oh yeah,
something that was like that you couldn't do? Maybe it's time to like think back and say, what did we not do prior to this happening in the break? Because there may be some sadness of things that didn't happen. So the way that the kids kind of hide it is just they're suffering. So what they do is they to deal with the suffering, they compartmentalize that suffering and just think, I'm not going to see him because it's too painful. I didn't get to do this, this, and the other thing.
sure. I mean, there's great. I mean, by the time when she started becoming a woman, a young woman, getting her menstrual cycle, that's when things started changing. And men should understand that boys need men when they, or actually, boys need their fathers when they start going through puberty. And who just said it? Men, women raise babies, men raise adults. I think that's a very good, and I'm not saying women don't have a place. My mother had a place in my life. My dad was more effective when I was going through puberty and going through, more masculine development. And so my daughter needed her mother more than she needed me during those, puberty, menstrual, becoming a young woman. And I get it. Fathers need to raise young men. Women need to raise young women. But it's got to be in a sense that the fathers respect the feminine and the women respect the masculine. And we're seeing that not be the case on our opponent's side, or on the opposite side. Women don't value fathers anymore. And that's
Right.
tough.
I think that's what there's a hole. I see it in my kids, and it's probably with your daughter. There is a hole in their life that's gone. I shouldn't say gone. It's not there because you're not with them every day. And I'll tell you something. When I see my kids and I say, do this, don't do this, there's sort of the combativeness because, well, Dad, you're not here all the time, so we don't live with you all the time. So, you really can't, we're going to do what we do. And, I've reminded them, I said, when I was 18, I knew everything. I thought I knew everything when I was 18. And looking back at it now, I knew nothing. It's just, but they're going to come around. They're going to come around because now they're realizing they're going to go to college. They're picking, what they want to do, and they can't sit home and they can't pick them. They can't pick the majors of, watching Disney movies, hanging out with mom, baking cookies. Now life's going to have a different change right now. What are we going to do? And I'll tell you, I've even said to my ex, I said, we need to change this situation because these kids can't grow up and take jobs and do things. And then, you become their dependent because, you don't have the job that you wanted. You spent all your money on attorneys. So your kids can't be the kids can't be a retirement program because I saw that with my ex's mother, and she had a spouse that passed away, and she really leaned on the kids for help, and I don't want to see that repeated with my ex. So,
right. Well, listen, John, this has been a great stream. We're 2 hours.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's do it again. Let's, you've been a wonderful contributor in all of the channels. And you've got great experience. You're a survivor. And we're just telling guys that they can have a great life. And you know what? Don't hate on your ex-wife. Even what she's done to you. Just realize that that was part of your development. That was part of your challenge. That was part of female nature. And make a better life. Get back to what you love. And hopefully you don't have to go through the washing machine cycle of the divorce court.
That's right. Well, Rad, you could be like that friend of mine that I sent you pictures of that owns a nice piece of property. He's got some money, and he's going to marry this 50-year-old woman that's like 300 pounds, who's got some cats and a 1999 Nissan Altima with broken springs.
With a picture over the check engine light. Is that crazy? Right. And a boot on the wheel.
There is hope, man. There is hope.
She got a boot on the wheel and a picture of herself over the check engine light. She haven't changed oil in 6 months. She got a bag of Twizzlers. Oh, I watch all of Greg Adams stuff, and I watch it on like 1.75.
Greg
But
Adams cracks
if
me
you
up.
watch him faster, I can't watch him on normal speed. But if you watch him on 1.75, he's even funnier.
I watch Greg Adams when he talks about the women 40 plus, and I almost want to cry because he's speaking such truth bombs of what we have in this society today. It makes me like petrified to go out and like I'll never have a relationship again.
Well, you know what? It's funny. Like, I respect everyone's desire, whether it's getting with Saifu. He's a great contributor. He's got a great channel. He goes his way. I've got guys that they're like, I don't want to deal with women. I totally get that. Then I deal with guys that are like, I get emails, John, from guys that literally want to get married, and they're like, what do I do, Rad? And now I try to give them advice. I try to be real. And then I got guys that want to date just here and there. Listen, you're the captain of your plane. You decide who gets to fly with you, where you fly, when you fly, how you fly. That's what we're, and understand what you're at. Understand what a relationship, the risks and the rewards of even hit and quit, of even a 3 or 4 time, or even a 6-month or a 12-month relationship, or a marriage or a co-op. Understand the risks, because we're not giving you, we're not making shit up. We've lived it. I'm bringing folks on the channel. We're in columns, we're in forums talking about our differences. Red Mind Man, you, One Fast Act, Father Sanders, Timmy Kramer, 56 years old, the forever bachelor, told by his uncle when he was 18, don't get married. He's the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
38 years later, he cashed in.
I had a relative in Italy, and his wife had passed away, and then he never remarried, took care of his daughter, and but he always had a girlfriend at least 20 years younger. It was kind of funny. He was in his 80s and he had a girlfriend that was like 60, and he was like, I'm not going to get married. Why should I get married? Well, some men can't be alone. The guy that I know that's marrying the 300-pound woman, I can't reach him. He goes on plenty of whales, and every woman he meets a woman. The next one is at least 50 pounds bigger than the previous one. I've never seen anything like this in my life. Growing up, like in the 80s, nobody was heavy. Everybody was normal. Today, you've got this. You got these women that are going with guys that, if it wasn't for social media and these dating sites, they would never approach these guys. So why are men going with these women that are? I look at this and I'm thinking, what do I get them for a wedding present? Should I get her a wheelchair? Disability insurance, life insurance. I mean, what should I get? I mean.
Well, yeah, they're all princesses. We talked about Princess Destiny syndrome. Plenty of whales, women on these dating sites. It's not. And I tell my boy, I got a 20-year-old boy that he's having difficulty dating 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds, because they all believe that they are princesses. So, work on yourself. Be the best version of yourself that you can be. Lose weight. If you feel depressed, move. Get out. Literally move your energy. Go on walks. The greatest thing you can do, the best exercise is an hour walk. You're doing it, John. I've done it. Hikes, mountain biking, working out, learning a guitar, playing your bass, doing the things that bring you happiness. It might be hard to get to that point. But you know what? Without these channels, I can't imagine. I started watching Big John back in the day, and Big John was a godsend. You know why? Because I listened to Big John and I read the comments and I said, you know what? I'm not special. All those guys experienced exactly what I experienced, and I loved it. I found a brotherhood where people I could understand myself through other people's experiences. And that is the greatest blessing of the YouTube platform. Even though they censor and they kick people off, there's a lot of guys whose lives are still existent because of these channels.
Some of the comments, Brad, I'm seeing about the 300-pounder, get her a gastric bypass. I mean, Jesus. Al Bundy would give her a slim fast. I mean, some of these comments are really funny.
Yeah.
But, I think, as you get older, I mean, being over 50, I'll tell you, it's not easy to keep the weight off like it was in the past. And that goes for women and for guys. But I think women have a tougher time keeping the weight off, during and after menopause. It's a real thing. And I'll tell you, being out and dating and meeting women that are either gone through menopause or are through menopause, it's life-changing events, my friends.
Be safe, everyone. John, it's been a pleasure.
Thank
Let's
you.
do it again. Have a good night. This has been a great stream. Rebel against defeat.